Get out of this lobby right now. People like you don't belong here. The words exploded across the polished marble floor of the Empire Tower Hotel, slicing through the quiet hum of the luxurious space. Before we dive in, comment where you're watching from, subscribe, hit like if you believe in dignity and justice, because this story will leave you speechless. It was late afternoon in downtown Chicago when Jamal Hayes walked into the Empire Tower Hotel, one of the flagship properties owned by Hayes Hospitality Group, the company he built from nothing into a national empire of 72 hotels across the United States. Today, he wasn't arriving as the CEO. No entourage, no suit, no announcement, just a gray polo shirt, dark jeans, and worn sneakers at 42 years old. Jamal wanted to see how his guests, especially those who looked like him, were treated when no one knew who they really were. The lobby glimmered with polished granite floors, crystal chandeliers, and soft golden lighting bouncing off the walls. Behind the sleek front desk stood Victor Lang, the 50-year-old hotel manager, a man who carried authority like a weapon. Beside him, Sarah Klein, 32, a front desk associate with a forced smile, and Raj Patel, 28, arms crossed tightly, scanning guests like a security guard rather than a welcoming face. The moment Jamal approached the desk, their eyes narrowed, as though he had walked into forbidden territory. "I have a reservation," Jamal said calmly, setting his ID and black titanium credit card on the counter. "Penthouse suite. Name's Hayes." Victor barely glanced at the card, then at Jamal, his cold stare filled with skepticism. "The penthouse?" he asked, his voice dripping with disbelief. "That's a top-tier room. You sure you're in the right hotel?" Before Jamal could respond, Sarah leaned closer, lowering her voice but loud enough for bystanders to hear. "I've seen this scam before." She picked up the intercom, her tone sharp and commanding. "Security. Possible uninvited guest attempting to access a VIP suite." Across the lobby, Mia Torres, a Miami travel blogger staying at the hotel, nudged her friend Ethan Cole, a content creator known for live streaming trending stories. "Start recording," she whispered. "Something's not right." Ethan's phone clicked live. Within seconds, hundreds of viewers tuned in, watching events unfold in real time. "Excuse me," Jamal said steadily, his voice even, but his jaw tightened. "There must be a mistake. The reservation was confirmed this morning." Victor smirked and picked up Jamal's card, flipping it between his fingers like a trophy. "Oh, I'm sure it was. We've seen plenty of fake bookings before. Fake names, fake cards." He turned to Raj. "Lock it up." Without hesitation, Raj grabbed the card and slipped it into the small safe under the desk. "Card secured," he said with a smirk, his tone mocking. Jamal exhaled slowly, holding back the frustration boiling beneath his calm surface. "That's my personal property," he said firmly. "Return it now." Raj shrugged. "Not until we verify who you are." Sarah, emboldened by Victor's silence, stepped forward and touched Jamal's arm. Pushing slightly, "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave before we involve law enforcement." From across the lobby, Mia's voice cut through the tension. "I'm recording this. You're stealing his property," Ethan whispered as his viewer count surged past 400. "It's going viral right now." Jamal turned to see the growing crowd of guests gathering near the velvet ropes, murmuring and pointing. Some pulled out their phones, filming discreetly. Others shook their heads in disbelief. Among them was an elderly woman clutching a stroller, whispering to her husband, "Why are they treating him like that?" But Victor's tone grew sharper. "Listen carefully," he barked, his voice loud enough for the entire lobby to hear. "We run a 5-star hotel here. We don't tolerate scams. Either you leave quietly, or security will escort you out." Jamal inhaled deeply, forcing himself to stay composed. Every muscle in his body screamed to react. But he knew better. He wasn't just here as a guest, he was here as an observer, testing his own system, his own policies, his own promise of fairness. And right now, that system was failing in front of hundreds, and soon, thousands, of witnesses online. Elena Vargas, the young concierge stationed nearby, hesitated as she scanned the reservation system on her tablet. Her voice trembled as she spoke softly. "Mr. Lang, his name is in the system. The penthouse is booked under Hayes." Victor spun around, glaring at her. "Stay out of this. Elena, you say one more word, and you're done." Jamal's patience thinned. He quietly unlocked his phone and sent a text to Tyrone Brooks, his executive assistant 4 blocks away at Hayes Hospitality headquarters. "It's happening." Tyrone's reply was immediate. "Systems ready. Waiting for your signal." Jamal slid the phone back into his pocket and looked Victor square in the eyes. "I'm giving you a chance," he said evenly. "Verify my reservation. Right now." Victor chuckled, a low, dismissive sound that carried arrogance. "I've been running hotels longer than you've probably been staying in them," he sneered. "I know a fake booking when I see one." Mia called out louder, her voice shaking with anger. "He gave you ID. You have no right to take his card," Ethan whispered into his phone. "Over 800 viewers now. Chat's blowing up." A younger guest in a navy blazer stepped forward from the crowd, his voice firm. "Sir, I saw his name pop up on the booking board behind the desk. He's not lying." Raj rolled his eyes and muttered, "Probably hacked it." Sarah folded her arms and added, "Look, it's simple. People like this try to sneak in. We stop them. We're protecting the hotel." Jamal turned slowly, his calm voice carrying weight. "People like me? Careful with your words." Sarah froze for a moment but didn't apologize. Victor leaned over the counter, his tone escalating. "I've canceled your reservation. Pack up and go." The air in the lobby thickened with tension. Guests murmured louder, phones tilted higher. Ethan's viewer count hit over 1,200. Jamal paused, his hand resting gently on the counter. A flash of memory crossed his mind. The night his father came home defeated, fired from his job at a hotel for looking untrustworthy. That wound, buried deep for decades, suddenly burned fresh. And that was the moment Jamal knew. This was bigger than him. He looked at Victor, his voice steady but sharp as glass. "You're making a mistake you won't recover from." Victor smirked one last time, completely unaware that the man standing in front of him didn't just have a reservation. He owned the entire hotel, and in less than 12 minutes, the power dynamics in this lobby would flip forever. "Security! Fraud alert in the lobby! Remove the guest immediately!" Victor's voice thundered across the marble floor, and the once silent crowd stirred like waves against a storm. The tension inside the Empire Tower Hotel lobby had reached its boiling point. Phones were raised, whispers turned into gasps, and a live stream audience that had started at a few hundred was now climbing toward 2,000 viewers. Jamal Hayes stood still, his breathing steady, his eyes fixed on Victor Lang, refusing to let the manager's arrogance dictate his next move. Inside, though, a storm brewed, memories of years spent being questioned, doubted, and humiliated for simply existing in spaces he had earned a right to enter. As Victor barked into the intercom again, Jamal's jaw clenched tight. In an instant, he was 18 again, standing in the lobby of a mid-tier Atlanta hotel where he had been kicked out for loitering. Even though he had a confirmed reservation, that memory burned deep. But so did his promise to himself. That one day, he would create a chain of hotels where every guest would be treated with dignity, no matter how they looked or dressed. And yet, here he was, in his own empire, watching that promise crumble before his eyes. Sarah Klein stepped forward, her voice clipped and impatient. "Sir, this is your last chance to leave quietly before we call the police," she said. her fingers hovering above the phone as though daring him to challenge her authority. The subtle shove she gave Jamal's arm was captured instantly on Mia's camera. Did she just put her hands on him? Mia's voice cracked, her outrage spilling into the live stream, five-star hotel treating a paying guest like a criminal. "This is insane," Ethan whispered into his mic as his chat exploded. "Over 2,700 viewers now. Hashtag Empire Tower scandal is trending." Jamal didn't flinch, didn't raise his voice. Instead, he pulled his phone from his pocket and called Tyrone Brooks, his executive assistant. "Log every word, every action," Jamal said quietly, his tone calm but deliberate. "We're building a record." Tyrone's response was immediate. "Already recording. Want me to loop in Rebecca from HR?" Jamal's eyes stayed locked on Victor. "Not yet," he replied, his voice low and controlled. "One more minute." That was when Raj Patel chimed in, his words sharp as knives. "Stop wasting our time. You're not getting that room. You don't belong here. Go back where you came from." The lobby gasped audibly, several guests exchanging stunned looks. Elena Vargas, the young concierge, couldn't stay silent any longer. "Raj, that's enough," she snapped, stepping forward to stand between Jamal and the desk. Her voice trembled, but her conviction didn't falter. "His name is in the system. I checked it myself. Penthouse suite, booked, paid in full." Victor turned on her like a predator. "Elena, one more word and you're done here," he hissed, his face flushing red. But Elena didn't back down. "I've worked here 4 years," she said, her voice rising just enough to carry across the crowd. "And I've seen this happen too many times. Black guests treated like suspects, families embarrassed, people denied rooms they paid for." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, and Mia whispered to Ethan. "She just blew the lid off this," Ethan muttered. "Viewers passing 4,000. This is about to explode." Jamal's composure remained unshaken, but inside, his heart pounded hard against his ribs. He'd been here before, different faces, different cities, but the same prejudice, the same assumptions. That old wound of watching his father lose his job for looking untrustworthy pulsed like it had just happened yesterday. He had built Hayes Hospitality Group to erase those biases. And yet, standing here now, it was obvious the rot ran deeper than policies and slogans. Victor slammed the desk with his palm, his patience unraveling. "I've had enough," he barked. "Security! Now!" Behind him, 2 uniformed guards approached cautiously, sensing the tension in the room, but before they could step closer, Mia's voice rose, sharp and clear. "Don't touch him. Everyone's watching. Over 5,000 people are live streaming this right now." The guards froze mid-step, glancing at each other nervously. Victor's face twisted into something darker, frustration mixed with fear. But his pride wouldn't let him back down. "I don't care who's watching," he snarled. "This hotel has standards, and we don't let just anyone waltz in here flashing fake cards and fake names." Jamal raised his chin slightly, his calm gaze piercing through Victor's anger. "Verify the reservation," he said softly. But the weight behind the words was undeniable. "Check the system. Do your job." Sarah crossed her arms tightly, scoffing under her breath. "People like this always have excuses," she muttered, forgetting her mic was still on. The live stream chat erupted instantly. Ethan read aloud. Comments are blowing up. "Fire them! Discrimination lawsuit incoming. Cancel Empire Tower." It's everywhere. Elena took a step closer to Jamal, lowering her voice so only he could hear. "Sir, I know who you are," she whispered, her eyes darting nervously toward the growing crowd. "But I won't say a word unless you want me to." Jamal gave her the slightest nod, grateful but focused. This wasn't about revealing his identity. Not yet. This was about seeing, recording, and proving. Then, Raj made the fatal mistake. "You think you can intimidate us with some story? You're nothing here. Nothing." He spat, his words dripping with contempt. Jamal finally turned his full attention on him, his voice smooth but cutting. "I built this," he said quietly. The words deliberate and sharp. "Every chandelier, every tile on this floor, every door in this building exists because of me." Raj laughed mockingly, shaking his head. "Yeah. Right. You? The owner? Prove it," Ethan whispered again into the mic. 10,000 viewers now. This is insane." A well-dressed guest in a charcoal suit stepped forward from the crowd, his voice steady and firm. "I saw him on Forbes last month," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "That's Jamal Hayes, the CEO of Hayes Hospitality." The entire lobby seemed to freeze. Gasps echoed softly. Sarah blinked, her confidence cracking. Victor's face paled for the first time. "That's impossible," he muttered under his breath, fumbling to unlock the reservation system on his terminal. And there it was, in bold capital letters: Hayes, Jamal, Penthouse Suite, VIP status confirmed. Victor stared at the screen, his hands trembling slightly, but his pride kept him silent. The crowd erupted in whispers, phones shaking as guests captured every reaction. Mia's voice trembled with a mixture of relief and triumph. "He owns this place," she whispered into her mic, "and they've been humiliating him for 10 straight minutes." Jamal didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He simply looked at Victor, his calm voice carrying across the stunned lobby. "Now, would you like to try that again? You've got 30 seconds to apologize before this goes places you can't recover from." Jamal's voice was calm, steady, and measured, but every syllable landed like a thunderclap in the silent lobby. Victor Lang swallowed hard, his bravado starting to fracture, yet his pride refused to back down. "You think you can intimidate me? I don't care who you are," Victor shot back, his voice cracking slightly. "This hotel has standards, and you're not above them." Jamal's gaze locked on him, sharp and unyielding, as hundreds of guests stood frozen, their phones raised like reporters documenting history. Mia whispered into her mic, her live stream now passing 15,000 viewers. "This is unreal." He's still pushing back, even after seeing Jamal's name in the system. Ethan read the chat quietly, his voice trembling with excitement. Comments are exploding. Hashtag Empire Tower Meltdown just hit trending #1. Jamal took a slow breath, sliding his hand into his pocket and tapping his phone. "Tyrone," he said softly when the call connected. "It's time. Lock the system." Across the street, inside Hayes Hospitality Group's headquarters, Tyrone Brooks was already seated at his workstation, multiple screens glowing with the company's live property dashboard. "Understood." "Boss," Tyrone replied, his fingers flying over the keyboard, engaging executive override for Empire Tower. "All staff accounts connected to front desk operations will lock in. 3, 2, 1. Back in the lobby, Raj Patel glanced at his terminal and froze as the screen suddenly dimmed. A red banner stretched across the display. "Access revoked. Contact corporate admin." "What the—" Raj stammered, jabbing at the keys. "I can't log in. The whole system's locked." Sarah frowned and tried hers, only to see the same error. "Victor." "Mine's not working either," she said, her voice laced with panic. Guests nearby leaned in, phones capturing every reaction, the live stream chat exploding in real time. "What's happening?" one whispered. "He's doing something," another replied softly. "And they're about to regret everything." Jamal turned slightly, addressing Tyrone again over the phone. "Patch me through to Rebecca Thompson," he instructed. Rebecca, head of HR for Hayes Hospitality, answered almost instantly, her voice calm but firm. "I'm here. Jamal. Ready when you are." Jamal's eyes swept across the faces behind the counter, landing on Victor. "Effective immediately," he said, his tone controlled but cutting. "Terminate Victor Lang, Sarah Klein, and Raj Patel for gross misconduct and discriminatory practices. Lock their badges, remove their system access, process formal separation, record every word for the legal audit." Rebecca's voice was crisp, echoing through the call speaker loud enough for those around him to hear. Terminations confirmed. All 3 employees are now locked out of Hayes Hospitality Systems. Mia gasped into her mic, her voice trembling. Did you hear that? He just fired the hotel manager and 2 staff. Live. In front of everyone, Ethan whispered to his chat. 23,000 viewers. This is insane. The ripple through the lobby was instant. Gasps, murmurs, even a few cheers. Sarah's face drained of color as she clutched her badge, staring down at the flashing red light on the scanner by the desk. It's deactivated, she whispered, her hands trembling. Raj slammed his palm on the counter, his voice sharp with panic. You can't do this! You can't just walk in here and— Jamal cut him off without raising his voice. I built this. I can. And I just did. Victor's jaw tightened, his pride finally cracking. This is illegal, he shouted, his voice desperate now. You can't fire us without notice. Jamal's eyes met his, steady and unwavering. Not only can I fire you, he said, his voice soft but razor sharp, but I can ensure you never work in hospitality again. We have a zero-tolerance policy for profiling, and you just gave me a perfect case study. Elena Vargas stepped forward hesitantly, placing herself beside Jamal as if drawing a silent line between him and the 3 terminated staff. Mr. Hayes, she said softly, her voice careful but clear. The penthouse is ready. Would you like me to escort you upstairs? Jamal nodded slightly but kept his eyes on Victor. No, he said quietly. I'm staying right here for now. I want everyone watching to hear this. He turned slightly toward the crowd, his voice carrying across the marble floor like a steady drumbeat. This isn't just about me. This is about every guest who's ever been judged by their appearance instead of their reservation. Every person treated like a suspect instead of a customer. Phones in the crowd tilted higher, guests murmuring words of support. Ethan whispered to Mia. 30,000 watching now, Twitter's exploding, hashtag Hayes owns Empire just went global. Sarah finally broke, tears welling in her eyes as she whispered, Victor told us to screen people like this. He trained us to question anyone who didn't look the part. Her confession hung heavy in the air. A dagger pointed straight at Victor. He spun toward her, his voice cracking. That's a lie, he shouted. But the damage was already done. Guests began murmuring louder, their anger swelling into the open. One man in a tailored suit raised his voice. I've stayed here 6 times and always felt uncomfortable. Now I know why. A young mother pushing a stroller spoke up. Last month they made me show my ID 3 times before giving me my room key. I thought it was just me. Mia turned her camera toward the crowd, her voice urgent and raw. This isn't an isolated incident. People are speaking up now. This goes way deeper than one bad manager. Jamal glanced toward Tyrone, his voice low but firm. Pull the last 24 months of complaint data for this property, he said. I want every single incident flagged and logged, Tyrone replied instantly. Already working on it. Early numbers are ugly. More than 60 verified guest complaints linked to profiling and inappropriate treatment. The crowd gasped collectively, their murmurs now replaced by stunned silence. Jamal took a step forward, his presence commanding yet calm. Empire Tower has failed its guests, he said evenly. But let me be very clear. This ends today. Ethan's livestream viewer count passed 42,000. Chat messages flooding in at lightning speed. Fire them all. Boycott Empire Tower. Hayes is a legend. Raj, visibly shaking now, tried one last desperate plea. Please, Mr. Hayes, I have a family, he said softly, his earlier arrogance gone. Jamal looked at him, his expression unreadable. Then you should have thought about that before humiliating mine, he said, his voice cool but cutting. Every guest is family here. Or at least, they're supposed to be. Sarah wiped at her eyes, whispering again. I just followed orders. Jamal's tone softened slightly. but only for a moment. Following bad orders doesn't make you innocent, he said gently, but it does make you accountable. Victor turned his glare toward Jamal, but his voice faltered as he tried to speak. You set us up, he accused weakly. Jamal shook his head slowly. No, he said evenly. I gave you an opportunity. And you failed your own standards. You didn't just disrespect me, you disrespected this entire company and the values it was built on. Elena's voice broke the silence. Steady and clear, Mr. Hayes. HR just confirmed. Their system access, payroll, and benefits have all been frozen. Jamal nodded once. His decision final. Escort them out, he instructed calmly. 2 security guards, the same ones Victor had summoned minutes earlier, hesitated briefly before stepping forward. Raj lowered his head in defeat. Sarah sobbed quietly, and Victor clenched his fists, glaring at Jamal one last time before storming toward the exit. The crowd erupted in murmurs, some clapping softly, others recording as the 3 disgraced employees walked past them. Mia's live stream spiked to 55,000 viewers, Ethan whispering breathlessly, "This is history in the making. He just fired an entire front desk team in 12 minutes. Live." Jamal turned back toward the stunned guests, his voice firm yet reassuring. "If anyone here has ever experienced anything like this," he said, scanning the crowd slowly, "I want you to report it. Today. Right now. Every single story will be heard, and every single issue will be resolved." Applause broke out. Quiet at first, but quickly spreading through the lobby, blending with the distant sound of phones buzzing as notifications exploded across social media. Jamal took a deep breath, his gaze lifting toward the grand chandelier overhead, as if silently promising himself, and everyone watching, that this moment wasn't just a personal victory, it was the start of something much bigger, and though no one realized it yet. The fallout from this 12-minute confrontation was about to reshape the entire hospitality industry. The lobby of the Empire Tower Hotel was no longer silent. It pulsed with whispers, camera shutters, and the steady hum of thousands of notifications chiming from guests' phones. 55,000 people were watching the live stream in real time, and that number was climbing fast. Jamal Hayes stood in the center of it all, calm and composed, but his presence carried a gravity that demanded attention. Moments ago, he had fired 3 employees on the spot, the manager Victor Lang, and front desk staff Sarah Klein and Raj Patel. And now, the ripple effect was beginning to spread far beyond the polished marble floor. "He owns this place," a voice whispered from the crowd, the words tumbling from one guest to another until the entire lobby buzzed with the revelation. People were still in shock, trying to reconcile the casually dressed man in a gray polo and sneakers with the CEO of a 72-hotel empire, Mia Torres, clutching her phone tightly, turned to her live stream audience. "If you're just joining us," she said breathlessly, "the man they just humiliated, accused of fraud, and tried to kick out of the penthouse suite is Jamal Hayes, the owner, the CEO, and they just lost their jobs live in front of everyone." Ethan Cole leaned closer to Mia's mic, his voice cracking from adrenaline. "Viewer counts pushing 70,000, he whispered. "Twitter, Reddit, TikTok, everything's blowing up." Jamal scanned the faces in front of him, seeing a mix of guilt, disbelief, and quiet validation. Guests who had been silent minutes earlier were now speaking up, their voices overlapping as stories spilled out. A middle-aged man in a navy blazer raised his hand slightly, as if asking permission to speak. "Mr. Hayes," he began cautiously. "I've stayed here 6 times in the past 2 years. I always felt like I was treated differently. I thought maybe it was in my head, but now I know it wasn't." A young mother holding her toddler nodded quickly, her voice shaking as she stepped forward. "They made me show my ID 3 times last month." She said, "I had a reservation, but they kept saying something didn't match. I was embarrassed in front of everyone. I didn't complain because, well, I didn't think anyone would care. Jamal's jaw tightened slightly, his chest rising with a slow breath as he absorbed each story. This wasn't just about him anymore. This was about something systemic, something broken. Elena Vargas, the concierge who had risked her job by defending him earlier, stepped closer and spoke softly but firmly. "Mr. Hayes, I've been working here 4 years," she said, her voice trembling as she fought to stay composed. "I've seen this happen again and again. Guests who don't fit the profile get questioned, denied upgrades, treated like they don't belong. I spoke up before, but Victor shut me down every time." Jamal turned to her, his expression softening for the first time that afternoon. "You stood up when it mattered," he said quietly, so that only she could hear, and that's not going to be forgotten. Then, louder, so the entire lobby could hear, effective immediately. "Elena Vargas is promoted to guest services manager of this property." Gasps echoed through the crowd, followed by a ripple of applause. Elena blinked rapidly, her hand covering her mouth in shock, tears welling as she nodded silently in gratitude. Mia captured the moment on live stream, whispering into her mic. "Did you see that? He just promoted her on the spot," Ethan murmured back. 85,000 viewers, chats exploding with heart emojis. Jamal turned back to the guests, his voice steady and deliberate, projecting without needing to shout. "I built Hayes Hospitality Group on one promise," he said, scanning the crowd slowly, letting his words breathe. "Every guest, no matter who they are, where they come from, or what they look like, deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. Today, this property failed to deliver on that promise, and I take responsibility for that failure." The murmurs quieted, phones lowered slightly, and the entire lobby seemed to lean closer, hanging on his every word. "I want every guest who has ever felt disrespected here," Jamal continued, "to come forward. Tell your story. We will review every complaint, every incident, and make it right. If you were overcharged, we'll fix it. If you were denied service, we'll make it right. Starting today, this hotel, and every hotel under my name, answers to you." A wave of applause erupted, stronger this time, filling the vast lobby with a sense of shared vindication. Mia whispered quickly into her phone. "We just crossed 100,000 live viewers. It's on every trending page. Hashtag Hayes Reform is already going viral," while the crowd cheered. Jamal stepped aside for a moment and called Tyrone Brooks, his executive assistant, who was still monitoring the situation from headquarters. "Status?" Jamal asked quietly. Tyrone's voice came crisp over the line. "Local news outlets are picking this up. Social media mentions just passed 1 million, and we've already logged over 45 complaints tied directly to Empire Tower in the last 12 months. Most citing profiling or appearance mismatches." Jamal closed his eyes briefly, letting the weight of that number settle in. "Send me the full report," he said, "and prepare to launch an internal review for all 72 properties." Tyrone hesitated. "Do you want me to keep this private for now, or go public?" Jamal's gaze swept across the crowd, his decision clear. "Public," he said firmly. "Transparency first. No more quiet fixes," as he ended the call. Another voice rose from the guests, an older gentleman in a charcoal gray suit, his hands trembling slightly as he spoke. "I used to stay at your hotels because I believed they were different," he said softly. "But I stopped after being denied an ADA-accessible room last year because the front desk insisted I didn't look disabled enough." His voice cracked on the last words, and the lobby fell silent. Jamal stepped closer, resting a steady hand on the man's shoulder. "That should never have happened," he said gently, "and I promise you, it never will again." More voices joined in, each recounting moments of humiliation, disrespect, and silent frustration for years. Guests had suffered quietly, believing their complaints would vanish into the void. But now, with cameras rolling and the world watching, their stories could no longer be ignored. Rebecca Thompson, head of HR, joined the call on speakerphone, her voice carrying clearly across the lobby. "Jamal," she said, "we're getting calls from other properties already. Guests from Boston, Dallas, Miami. Similar complaints, same patterns." Jamal's face hardened, his expression shifting from disappointment to resolve. "Then this isn't an Empire Tower problem," he said, his voice low but full of conviction. "This is a Hayes hospitality problem, and I won't allow it to continue." The weight of his words settled heavily in the room. Guests exchanged looks, some recording every second, others simply standing silently, absorbing the gravity of what was unfolding. Mia wiped her eyes as she turned her phone toward herself for a moment, speaking directly to her audience. "You guys, we're watching history happen right now. This isn't just about one hotel. This is about change." Ethan leaned in, reading the comments pouring in, trending worldwide. 125,000 live viewers. Everyone's calling this the Hayes Hotel Revolution. Jamal turned back toward the crowd one final time, his voice steady, calm, and full of quiet authority. "From this moment forward," he said, "Hayes Hospitality will be conducting a company-wide audit. Every employee, every policy, every complaint. If you've been mistreated, we will know about it, and we will fix it." A hush fell over the lobby as his words sank in, followed by a roar of applause so loud it rattled the crystal chandeliers above. Jamal didn't smile, but his shoulders eased slightly, the weight of years of silent frustration finally beginning to lift. Yet deep down, he knew this was only the beginning. Empire Tower had fallen, but what he uncovered next would shake the entire company and the entire industry to its core. The Empire Tower hotel lobby still buzzed with energy, phones flashing, cameras rolling, voices murmuring. But Jamal Hayes's focus had shifted entirely. The local humiliation had been addressed. Victor Lang, Sarah Klein, and Raj Patel were gone. But something about Sarah's tearful confession still echoed in his mind. "Victor told us to screen people like this." That phrase stuck like a thorn, scratching at something deeper. Jamal stepped aside from the crowd, pulling out his phone and calling Tyrone Brooks at headquarters. "Pull every internal communication from Victor's team for the last 2 years," he said firmly. "Emails, memos, training documents, everything." Tyrone was already ahead of him. "I'm on it, boss, and—" His voice hesitated for a beat before hardening. "You need to see this." A soft click, a brief pause. And then Tyrone continued, "I've cross-referenced all guest complaints tied to Empire Tower against training directives. There's a pattern." Jamal's brows furrowed. "What kind of pattern?" Tyrone's voice sharpened. "A coded list. Instructions to flag high-risk guests. The language is subtle, but we've seen it before. Profile mismatched appearance with reservation tier. Translation: anyone who didn't look wealthy enough for the room they booked got extra scrutiny." Jamal's jaw tightened. "Who signed off on that?" Tyrone's reply came crisp and cold. "All arrows point to Harold Jenkins." The name landed like a gut punch. Harold Jenkins, the former regional director overseeing the Chicago, Dallas, and Miami clusters, retired 18 months ago. But he had been with the company for over 2 decades. Jamal had once trusted him implicitly, but now the truth was cracking open like a dam. "Send me his file," Jamal said, his tone low, measured, but laced with restrained anger. Tyrone tapped rapidly in the background. "It gets worse." He continued, "Empire Tower isn't the only property following this playbook. Early scans show at least 11 hotels using the same criteria, most of them under Harold's supervision before he left." Mia, still live streaming nearby, caught Jamal's tense expression and whispered into her mic, "Something's happening. He just got news from corporate." Ethan leaned closer, scanning his phone. 98,000 live viewers. He murmured, trending worldwide. Hashtag Hayes audit is climbing fast. Jamal turned, his voice steady but sharp. Addressing Tyrone again, expand the scope, he ordered. Full company-wide audit. All 72 properties. I want reports from every regional director on my desk by midnight. Tyrone didn't hesitate. Understood. But you should also know this. Jenkins left behind a network of managers who still follow his methods. If we dig into this, we'll probably expose more than just Empire Tower. Jamal's eyes scanned the lobby, locking briefly on Elena Vargas, now promoted to guest services manager, who was helping a young mother calm her toddler after recounting her story. He saw the quiet fear in other guests' faces, their voices trembling as they admitted they'd suffered similar treatment before. He thought of his father, coming home decades ago after losing his job for looking untrustworthy. And the fire inside him burned hotter than ever. Good, Jamal said finally, his voice low but resolute. It's time to tear this out by the roots. Tyrone's voice carried back through the line. I'll get Rebecca looped in to prepare HR notifications and legal briefings. This won't stay quiet. Jamal, we're talking lawsuits, media coverage, maybe even federal oversight. Jamal exhaled slowly, the weight of his next move settling on his shoulders. Then we don't hide from it, he said. We lead it. As he ended the call, Mia stepped forward cautiously, her phone still streaming. Mr. Hayes, she asked softly, are you saying this isn't just an Empire Tower issue? Jamal turned to face her, his voice measured but firm enough to carry across the growing crowd. No, he said. This is bigger than one hotel. What happened here today is a symptom of something deeper, a culture that's been allowed to grow in the shadows. But starting now, we shine a light on every corner. The crowd murmured, some nodding, some clapping quietly. As his words settled over the room like a promise, Ethan whispered into Mia's mic. 115,000 live viewers now. People are calling this the start of a revolution. Jamal pulled out his phone again and called Rebecca Thompson, head of HR, who joined the line immediately. Rebecca, he said, draft an internal memo for all staff. Every single employee needs to know this investigation is happening, and they need to know why. Make it clear. Zero tolerance for profiling, zero tolerance for discrimination, and full transparency going forward. Rebecca's voice was steady and unwavering. Consider it done. And Jamal, be ready for blowback. Some of the old guard won't go quietly. Jamal's lips pressed into a thin line. Then we replace them. He said simply, this company isn't theirs. It belongs to the guests we serve. Across the lobby. A few guests overheard the call and broke into soft applause, some shouting, thank you, while others simply nodded with relief. Elena stepped closer to Jamal, lowering her voice so only he could hear, this is going to change everything, isn't it? Jamal glanced at her, his eyes steady but full of quiet determination. Not just for this hotel, he said, but for every hotel we run, for every guest who ever walked into one of our lobbies and felt unwelcome. That ends today. At that moment, Ethan's live stream crossed 130,000 viewers, the chat exploding with messages of support, gratitude, and fury at the revelations. Journalists began calling Mia's phone. Local news crews arrived outside the hotel, and hashtags like hashtag Hayes Forward, hashtag Empire Tower Scandal, and hashtag Hospitality Reform all trended simultaneously. Tyrone texted Jamal updates in real time. We've got statements drafted for the press, but CNN, CNBC, and the Wall Street Journal are already calling. Jamal typed back quickly. We'll hold a press conference tomorrow morning. Stream it live on every platform. Then, almost as an afterthought, he added, get a security sweep done on all Jenkins-era policies. Within minutes, his inbox flooded with initial findings. copies of Harold Jenkins' directives instructing staff to verify appearance alignment with booking tiers, coded emails hinting at high-risk profiles, and internal chat threads from managers mocking guests who looked out of place. Jamal's chest tightened as he scrolled through them. Each message another reminder of how far the rot had spread under his watch. But instead of anger, what settled in him was resolve. He turned back toward the crowd, lifting his voice so everyone could hear, his words carrying not just authority, but vision. "I can't change the past," he said steadily, "but I can promise you this. Hayes Hospitality will lead the industry in equity and inclusion. We will create standards no other hotel chain has dared to set, and we will enforce them relentlessly, not for PR, not for profit, but because this is what hospitality is supposed to mean." The room fell silent. Every face turned toward him, every phone pointed in his direction. Capturing history as it unfolded, Ethan whispered softly, 150,000 viewers, and climbing fast. Jamal paused, scanning the crowd, locking eyes with guest after guest, letting the weight of his words settle. "I want everyone watching this," he said, his tone deep and deliberate, "to know this isn't just an investigation. This is a promise. If you've been mistreated at any of our properties, we want to hear your story. Call us, email us, message us, and we will make it right." The lobby erupted in applause, louder than before, echoing through the grand hall like a wave crashing against stone. In that moment, Jamal knew the next phase wouldn't be easy. The audits, the lawsuits, the corporate infighting, but none of it mattered. Change had already begun. And once the truth about Harold Jenkins's hidden network came to light, the entire hospitality industry would never be the same again. 6 months later, the Empire Tower Hotel lobby looked unrecognizable. The same polished marble floors reflected the same crystal chandeliers, but the energy inside had transformed. What was once a symbol of silent humiliation now stood as the epicenter of a movement reshaping an entire industry. Above the front desk, mounted where every guest could see it, hung a sleek silver plaque engraved with Jamal Hayes's promise, "This space belongs to all guests." It was more than words. It was a manifesto, backed by action that had rattled the hospitality world. In the 6 months since the confrontation, Jamal had spearheaded the most aggressive reforms in the company's 50-year history. What began as a single incident caught on livestream had evolved into the Hayes Forward Initiative, a multi-million-dollar program aimed at dismantling systemic bias across all 72 hotels. Every single employee, from front desk clerks to regional directors, underwent mandatory anti-bias and equity training. HR policies were rewritten from the ground up. Complaint hotlines were centralized, with real-time reporting dashboards accessible directly to Jamal's office. Anonymous guest feedback kiosks were installed in every property lobby, linked to the company's internal audit system. And for the first time in the hospitality industry, Hayes Hospitality deployed AI-powered bias detection software, monitoring booking patterns, guest interactions, and staff conduct, a controversial but groundbreaking step designed to ensure fairness and accountability at scale. But reform came with resistance. Not everyone welcomed the changes. Dozens of longtime managers loyal to Harold Jenkins pushed back, accusing Jamal of tearing down company traditions. Several filed wrongful termination lawsuits, claiming they were scapegoats. Others went to the press anonymously, trying to paint Jamal as vindictive and reckless. The backlash hit headlines on every major outlet. "Hayes Hospitality faces corporate uprising," screamed one CNBC headline, while the Wall Street Journal framed it as a battle for the soul of hospitality. But public opinion told a different story. Social media exploded with hashtags like #HayesForward, #HospitalityReform, and #GuestsFirst, dominating timelines across TikTok, Reddit, and X. Millions watched clips from Mia Torres's original live stream, now sitting at over 1 million views and archived as a case study in corporate accountability. Jamal's decisive actions became the subject of business school discussions, legal panels, and even late-night talk shows. Meanwhile, Elena Vargas, the concierge who had stood up for Jamal in that tense moment, had risen quickly through the ranks. She now served as the National Guest Experience Advisor, overseeing quality standards across all properties, at a company summit. She told her story to thunderous applause, describing how Jamal's reforms had given her not just a promotion, but a purpose. Mia Torres and Ethan Cole, whose live stream ignited the firestorm, became unlikely advocates for equity and hospitality. Jamal invited them to partner with Hays Forward as external auditors, using their platforms to crowdsource guest experiences and highlight hidden patterns of bias. Together, they built an open-access transparency portal, where travelers could track complaint resolutions and rate their experiences across Hays properties. "We wanted the power back in the hands of the guests," Mia said during a CNN interview. "Now, no one walks into a Hays hotel wondering if they belong." But while Jamal celebrated progress, the audit Tyrone Brooks had initiated months earlier unearthed unsettling truths. Harold Jenkins's network was deeper than expected. Nearly 23 properties had followed his appearance alignment policy, and over 1,200 documented complaints across 3 years revealed systemic profiling patterns. The revelations forced Jamal to issue a public apology on live television, standing before a wall of cameras and microphones, his voice steady. He spoke directly to the millions watching. "I failed to see what was happening under my leadership." That ends today. Hays hospitality belongs to every guest who walks through our doors, and I will not stop until that promise is real. The statement went viral instantly, viewed over 8 million times within 48 hours. Shareholders worried the company would crumble under the mounting lawsuits. But something unexpected happened. Bookings increased. Surveys showed 92% of former guests trusted Hays hospitality more after the reforms than before. Consumer confidence soared as Jamal's transparency won over skeptical travelers. Still, not everyone forgave easily. Civil rights attorneys filed class action lawsuits against Empire Tower and other properties, demanding reparations for years of discriminatory treatment. Jamal instructed Rebecca Thompson, head of HR, to settle claims swiftly, prioritizing resolution over litigation. "We're not fighting the people we failed," he told her in a private meeting. "We're rebuilding with them." By mid-year, Hays Hospitality launched the Hays Equity Council, a diverse advisory board made up of former guests, civil rights advocates, and independent watchdog groups. This council reviewed every policy change before implementation, ensuring no blind spots remained. And the Hays Forward initiative expanded beyond internal reforms. Jamal pledged $25 million toward scholarships for underrepresented students pursuing careers in hospitality management, creating a new generation of leaders who reflected the diversity of the guests they served. The ripple effect reached far beyond his company. Rival chains like Marriott, Hilton, and Hyatt announced their own equity programs within months, citing Hays Forward as the industry benchmark. CNBC called ETA Hospitality Reckoning, while Business Insider dubbed Jamal the CEO who rewrote the rulebook. But inside Jamal's office overlooking downtown Chicago, the man himself remained focused and relentless. Tyrone Brooks handed him a new report showing a 74% drop in guest complaints since reforms rolled out. But Jamal's eyes were already on the next target, eliminating the last remnants of Harold Jenkins' policies across the network. "We're not done," he said quietly, almost to himself. At the next shareholder summit, Jamal addressed the boardroom, his voice carrying the same calm authority he had shown in the Empire Tower lobby 6 months earlier. "We don't measure success by occupancy rates anymore," he said, pausing as the room fell silent. "We measure it by trust." The statement drew a standing ovation, not just from shareholders but from employees watching the live stream company-wide. By now, Hayes Hospitality wasn't just surviving the scandal. It was thriving. The company's stock rebounded stronger than ever. Bookings reached record highs, and Jamal's reforms were studied globally as a model for transforming customer-first cultures. And yet, Jamal knew the battle wasn't over. In a quiet moment late one evening, standing in the very spot of the Empire Tower lobby where it all began, he watched guests check in freely, smiling, unburdened. Elena walked past, greeting a family with warmth and ease, and Jamal allowed himself a rare, small smile. For the first time in decades, he felt his father's shadow lift. The memory of that night his father came home, fired for looking untrustworthy, finally finding peace through the change he had fought so hard to create. What began as 12 minutes of humiliation had grown into a movement that reshaped an entire industry. And Jamal Hayes, the man once doubted in his own hotel, now stood as the architect of a new standard, one where dignity wasn't an exception, but the rule, and hospitality finally lived up to its name. 6 months after the Empire Tower incident shook the hospitality industry, Jamal Hayes stood on the grand stage of the Global Hospitality Leadership Summit in New York City. Thousands filled the hall, and millions more watched the live stream worldwide. The giant screens behind him displayed the bold silver emblem of Hayes Forward, the initiative born from one humiliating encounter that sparked a revolution. As the applause faded, Jamal stepped to the microphone, his voice steady, calm, and resonant. 6 months ago, he began, I walked into one of my own hotels dressed like any other guest. No entourage, no suit, no title. And within 12 minutes, I was profiled, accused, and humiliated in front of strangers. A hush fell over the crowd as he paused, letting the weight of his words settle in those 12 minutes. I was reminded of something I learned as a boy on Chicago's South Side. He continued softly, dignity isn't given, it's assumed, until someone decides you haven't earned it. Behind him, images of that day appeared on the screens, clips from Mia Torres's viral live stream, now viewed over 15 million times. The crowd stirred as Jamal gestured toward the footage. What happened that day wasn't about one hotel, or 3 employees, or even me. It was about a system, a quiet, dangerous culture that had been allowed to grow unchecked, a culture where appearance decided worth, where stereotypes determined service, where dignity came with conditions. That ends today. The audience erupted in applause, but Jamal raised his hand gently, calming them. We didn't hide from our failures, he said firmly. We faced them, we investigated them, and we acted. He outlined the sweeping reforms Hayes Hospitality had implemented. Mandatory anti-bias training for over 1,000 employees, the installation of anonymous guest feedback systems in all 72 hotels, the creation of the Hayes Equity Council, and the deployment of AI-driven monitoring tools to identify patterns of discrimination in real time. We didn't stop at apologies, Jamal continued, his voice strong but measured. We changed the rules. As he spoke, the screens displayed before and after statistics, a 74% drop in guest complaints, a 92% increase in trust ratings, and record-breaking bookings across every region. And this isn't just about our company, Jamal added, his tone softening. It's about an entire industry waking up to its responsibility. Because hospitality isn't just about rooms and reservations, it's about belonging. The cameras panned across the audience. Executives, hotel owners, civil rights advocates, and travelers, many wiping tears from their eyes. Elena Vargas, sitting in the front row, smiled through quiet emotion as Jamal acknowledged her. I want to thank those who stood up when it wasn't safe, he said warmly. People like Elena, who spoke truth to power in that lobby, risking her career to defend a guest she barely knew. People like Mia Torres and Ethan Cole, who refused to stay silent and used their voices to shine a light on what the world needed to see. The camera cut to Mia and Ethan, seated side by side, visibly moved as the audience applauded loudly. Jamal's gaze swept across the crowd, his voice dropping slightly, becoming more intimate, as though speaking directly to each viewer watching live. But I also want to speak to everyone who has ever walked into a place, a hotel, a bank, a restaurant, and felt unwelcome. To everyone who has ever been judged before they were heard. To everyone who's been made to feel small in spaces they had every right to be. I see you, I hear you, and I promise you, this fight isn't over. A silence fell over the hall, deep and unbroken, as Jamal paused, letting the weight of his words breathe. Then he delivered the heart of his message, the line that would dominate headlines and hashtags for days to come. Hospitality begins with assumed respect, he said slowly, deliberately, each word echoing across the vast chamber. Not earned respect, assumed. Until you give me a reason to doubt you, I will treat you like you belong here, because you do. The audience rose in unison, thunderous applause shaking the hall, but Jamal's expression remained humble, grounded. The Hayes Forward Initiative isn't just a program. He continued once the applause softened. It's a promise that every guest, no matter their race, their background, their clothes, their bank account, walks into one of our hotels and feels one thing above all else: dignity. He gestured toward the silver plaque on the screen, the same one hanging in every Hayes hospitality property worldwide. This space belongs to all guests. Those aren't just words, he said. They're a contract, as Jamal concluded. The audience stood in prolonged ovation. Reporters scribbled furiously, and social media platforms flooded with messages of support. Mia's live stream counter ticked past 22,000 live viewers, while hashtags like #HayesForward, #DignityFirst, and #HospitalityRevolution trended globally outside the summit. Cameras flashed as news anchors prepared breaking reports. Inside, Jamal took a quiet step back from the podium, allowing the moment to belong not to him, but to everyone who had ever been silenced, doubted, or dismissed. For Jamal, this wasn't about revenge against Victor Lang, Sarah Klein, or Raj Patel. It wasn't even about the viral moment that started it all. It was about his father, who decades ago had come home from work defeated, fired for looking untrustworthy. It was about every guest who had walked into a lobby and wondered if they belonged. And it was about rewriting what hospitality meant, not just for Hayes, but for an entire industry. That day, Jamal Hayes didn't just reclaim his dignity, he gave it back to millions. And as the lights dimmed and the summit closed, one truth was undeniable. What began as 12 minutes of humiliation had become a movement, a lasting legacy that would shape the future of hospitality for generations to come. Thank you for watching. If you believe everyone deserves respect, please like, subscribe, and comment where you're watching from.